Hello guys, and today I've decided to share a little bit more with you about my experience on the Piers Morgan Uncensored Show, why I was a little bit hesitant about joining it, but then decided to come and speak for the Ukrainians. Honestly, I'm grateful for this opportunity to tell more about the way Ukrainians feel on the ground, and this very popular phrase, realities on the ground, definitely include Ukrainians and our knowledge of the Russian mindset. So I was a bit worried that I'm not good at harassing others, because many describe the show as a harassment show where you have to be super aggressive. And I come from a family where shouting and over demonstrating your emotions were always considered a sign of weakness. So I did not interrupt some openly pro-Russian guests, not because I was afraid or because I didn't know what to say, but because shouting and interrupting for me is about losing. I kept moving my hand. Some of the Russian trolls kept commenting my manicure, which is totally okay for me, but in reality that were the moments when I wanted to take the word, and I'm actually grateful that I had the final summary. But let's start with this very important mistake that the global media keeps making when talking about the Kremlin, when talking about Russia, when talking about the history of the USSR. They forget to invite people from Ukraine, from Georgia, from Lithuania, from Poland, those who experienced what communism was, those who know the true face of the Kremlin. They often invite people who had their PhD written about Khrushchev, I don't know, somewhere in 1960s. They have people who once visited St. Petersburg when it was still Leningrad, and they consider Donald Trump to be an expert in Russia, when in reality that is total BS, and that's exactly what we witnessed when Trump and Putin met. And I feel very sorry for the people of the United States, whom I believe also saw it as a great humiliation for their nation, for their diplomatic history, when Trump literally clapped, meeting the war criminal Putin on the American soil and made American soldiers roll the red carpet, which reminded to all of us in Ukraine the blood of innocent Ukrainian children in front of the Kremlin goblin. But I speak more about that on the main channel, Anna from Ukraine. If you are not familiar, check and subscribe, and please subscribe here, because this is our new platform to talk a little bit more about feelings and emotions. And here I return back to this hesitation whether to join or not to join Piers Morgan Show, because I watched a lot of episodes and I realized it is very much about shouting, about interrupting others. And once again, for me, it's not a sign of strength. For me, it's a sign of weakness. And to tell you the truth, coming from such a family, I have a weird reaction if someone starts shouting at me. And no, it's not crying or being lost. No, it's just the country. I start laughing. Once I had a very funny and pretty risky situation with my boss. When he was shouting at all of us, and it was his management style to some extent. He resembles me, Donald Trump, and I reacted by saying, please calm down. You are now very red in your face and I'm worried that you have a really high blood pressure. He was silent for 10 minutes and then he said, okay, enough. I don't know how people live with you. That was his reaction to my comment, but that's exactly how I feel. I'm not terrified when you're shouting at me. I'm not terrifying when you're interrupting me. I feel like you're a tiny, whiny creature. And that's exactly how I felt about this Russian propagandist. They literally had a Russian TV host from Russia-occupied territories speaking on the show, and also people, once again, who are good. Some of them are supportive, and I'm very grateful. But from my Ukrainian perspective, they keep repeating very obvious things, forgetting about the dynamics of war and the exposed weaknesses of Russia. And that is exactly what I wanted to talk about, because it's pretty easy to keep repeating about the dangers of the nuclear war. But I have a different argument. The Operation Spiderweb, the drone warfare, the inability of Russia to successfully test Oreshnik, demonstrate that nuclear weapons soon will also be dinosaurs of the deterrence. They did not work with Russia attacking other countries, but they can also lead to serious problems with drone warfare development. Every Ukrainian is afraid not of a nuclear bomb. We know they can send drones to nuclear power plants, but like literally anyone can do that. And more military experts who are professionals in the 21st century warfare keep speaking about the fact that nuclear weapons stop playing that central role. And it's interesting that nobody is speaking about the losses of Russia in comparison to the gains. And that is what I managed to say on the show when I've mentioned that during a year and a half of constant offensives from the Russian side, from constant restrictions for Ukraine to target or not to target oil refineries, military air bases, Trump once stopped sharing intelligence with Ukrainians. We have unpredictable problems with Starlink. I mean, lots of obstacles. And with all that, during a year and a half of this offensive from the Russian side, they gained 1% of the Ukrainian territory for million of Russian lives. And nobody is talking about that. That is so absurd. When we see that the only reason why Putin went to Alaska is to prevent Trump from sanctions, from more sanctions, because Russian economy is on the brink of the collapse, and it's actually the best time to, destroy their war machine, to lead to the collapse of the Kremlin regime. And trust me, everybody needs that. But you won't hear people talking about that. You will hear people keep repeating old Cold War arguments, saying that we have to respect democracy and freedom. I know that. Here in Ukraine, we fight for that. But I also understand that these arguments do not work with the majority of people around the world. And they keep saying, we don't care about Ukraine. To tell you the truth, I receive a lot of positive comments, but I also receive a lot of these toxically neutral comments when people say, I remember living in Denmark in times of the Cold War of the Soviet Union, and I was totally okay. With that, I know it may not be very good for you, but it was totally okay for me. So I understand as a Ukrainian, once again, unfortunately, that this moral clarity does not play any important role anymore. And actually, that is the reason why so many wars and conflicts appear. But I also understand that I should not address such topics because people know how to hide from them. People are still looking for the good Russians, People are still looking for simple solutions of very complex problems. So as a Ukrainian, I was grateful for the opportunity to remind that it's not about Ukraine, that Russia is fighting against us with China, North Korea, Iran. They are doing it together. It's Iranian drones killing Ukrainians. And also, it's about the destruction of the world order. It's about total disrespect to human rights. So all we have to do is protect the international world order and human rights. And then in Ukraine, we will survive. Forget about Ukraine. Think about those rules that you want to pass on to your children. Because otherwise, Taiwan is in danger. The Philippines is in danger. All the former Soviet republics are in danger. Because I'm sure you saw Lavrov, the so-called minister of the Russian Federation, appearing in Alaska wearing a sweater with the USSR written on it. And when I keep speaking that Putin wants to recreate the USSR, lots of sane people keep telling me, Anna, you are exaggerating. Anna, it's not that way. It is. They openly show it coming on the so-called peace talks. In the United States, wearing a sweater, the USSR on a minister of foreign affairs. That is a mockery of the United States at that moment. And once again, as a Ukrainian, under constant attacks, I feel sorry for the American people, good American people who disagree with that. And thank you so much for demonstrating your support to Ukraine for going out on the streets in Alaska and elsewhere. Because that's, once again, not about Ukraine, it's about you. You respecting yourself. You not saying that let's glorify a war criminal because he has nuclear weapons. Then he will keep using this argument by saying that, we cannot do anything. Russia has nuclear weapons. You encourage Russia to conquer more and more territories that otherwise can be good countries, healthy countries, your trade partners, your protection from the evil Moscow empire. So I'm always happy to participate, and if you have any acquaintances, any shows where I can appear, it's not about me. I have my techniques, how to keep calm, but I think it's super important to invite more people, maybe not me, but people from Ukraine, people from Lithuania, people from Poland, to speak for our part of the world, because I am sorry, Donald Trump knows nothing about Russia. He's been there a couple of times, eating caviar, having fun with some girls, buying fur coats for his lovers, but that's not the knowledge of Russia. And right now, it's not about Ukraine, and that is why I feel that more and more European countries actually care about strategy for the defeat of the Kremlin. They are afraid to speak about that because many are still afraid of the dissolution of the Russian Federation, which has already started. But Ukraine did not attack anyone. NATO did not plan to invade Moscow or St. Petersburg. If you have heard about such plans, let me know in the comments below. Expansion of NATO did not provoke Russia, and there were no agreements banning NATO from expanding. And the largest country in Europe, independent country, can decide that for itself. I don't want to live and see times when Putin literally has veto inside NATO. And I had people telling me, in the comments, Putin cannot have veto. Anna, you don't know. Putin is not a NATO member. People, that's you not understanding my sarcasm. I know that Russia is not a member of NATO, but then why Putin has a right to ban Ukraine to join NATO? Why the American president keeps repeating that? Why 1,000 kilometers of new NATO border in Finland is not a problem, but the fact that Ukraine or Georgia wants to join is a problem. It's pretty logical why we want to join NATO after Russia attacked Moldova, Chechnya, Georgia, after the things it did in Syria. And what is also interesting, and many forget about, is that countries that were formerly controlled by the Kremlin, that were formerly very dependent on the Kremlin, see that Moscow is the weakest ever. And that is why they escape out of its hand. Armenia and Azerbaijan, it's not the breakthrough of Donald Trump. It's the understanding that Moscow can do nothing at this moment, that Moscow is losing influence and everybody wants to get out of the USSR. It's just past-oriented Russia that wants to keep the countries and to suck the resources. The only way they have opportunity to survive in Moscow and St. Petersburg is by stealing the wealth of their distant republics. That's a Freudian slip. Summed up for that. And remember to share these videos and subscribe, people. We need to remain united. The world is a chaotic place, and Trump does not understand what he is doing, mildly speaking. Putin keeps saying, I have put down these territories in our constitution. I can put down you in my passport. Will it make you my husband if I find some witnesses? Perhaps not. So why on earth do we care that a crazy ruler, almost 30 years of Moscow, is saying? That's absurd that people take it as serious arguments. But most importantly, when we talk about these realities on the ground, the realities on the ground are Ukrainians are prepared to fight and are doing it really good. Please do not restrict us. Second, Realities on the ground, losing 1 million souls, Putin did not manage to achieve any of his plans and actually turned Russia into a war zone with dozens of their regions targeted, military facilities, arsenals, drone building plants. That's a breakthrough. Russia is in a no-fly zone, and realities on the ground is that neither Putin nor Trump will be around in 10 or 20 years. So how can we allow these people sacrifice so many beautiful nations? Because if Putin is at peace, this will be many, many, many more. And there were times when half of Berlin was literally Russian. These people won't be around in 10 or 20 years. They already demonstrate tremendous cognitive decline. Because how else can you explain Trump clapping, applauding a war criminal, Putin? That is a disgrace. And I'm grateful to speak with you, to share with you my understanding, Ukrainian understanding of the situation, to share with you my confidence that the only working peace plan is to defeat and demilitarize Russia, and that is very possible because it's the weakest ever. Stop talking about nuclear weapons. Putin speaks less about nuclear weapons than people in the White House. What also surprised me on Piers Morgan Show, the comments. Of course, I've read them. I'm very grateful to all of you who left your support, and maybe they will invite more speakers from Ukraine or other countries that know what the Kremlin is. But I have never realized that the society, the commentators are that sexist. That's not the thing in Ukraine. And when I hear from some of my friends in the United States that it's very different in the US than in Ukraine, I have always took it with a grain of salt, if I'm right. But now I realize there were so many people talking about my appearance, in general complimenting, and I cannot be angry when someone says, oh, if she was so smart as she's beautiful. That's not the way to offend me because I know I'm smart. I'm sorry, but I know that. Also, people are super, I'm sorry, racist, and they kept talking about me not being white enough for a Ukrainian woman. That is something you will never hear in Ukraine. So there are serious problems in the society. But my favorite one was, it literally made me laugh, was who has invited this OnlyFans model to participate on a panel. I guess they were talking about that Russian host. Let me know what were your impressions. If you haven't checked, check that video, cheer them up for hosting Ukrainians. Maybe more of us will come. Subscribe to this channel, subscribe to Anna from Ukraine channel, check the merch shop. Lots of really good items that work well as reminders and conversation starters about Ukraine. And you see, we need that. I'm always grateful when you leave your comments and tell how these t-shirts, hoodies, caps, cups, stickers help you work as the ambassadors of Ukraine. I'm very, very grateful for that. Same as for buying me coffees, becoming my patrons and sponsors of the channel. Follow me on X, Instagram, Blue Sky, Threads, Discord. The links in the description of this video. And thank you so much that we have this community. I don't know how about you, but for me, knowing that I have this friends and family gives confidence that Russia will be defeated, together with all those who support it. Slava Ukraini!